In the small town of Bitterwood, South Carolina, lived Jason Whitmore, a charismatic and successful real estate agent. He was 45 years old, known to his friends and clients for his big smile and easygoing nature. Jason's life seemed enviable to many in Bitterwood. He had a career that thrived, a beautiful home on the outskirts of town, and a seemingly happy family. Jason was married to Caroline Whitmore, a meticulous and intelligent woman in her mid-30s who worked as an accountant at a local firm called Caroline and Consulting. Caroline had a tough start in life, becoming a mother at 16 to her daughter, Tessa Wright, who was now an 18-year-old freshman studying psychology at Bitterwood University. Caroline's past, involving working as a dancer to make ends meet, had only made her more driven to succeed. Despite their age difference, Jason and Caroline had built a life together that seemed almost picture-perfect. Tessa, Jason's stepdaughter, was an ambitious young woman who, on the surface, appeared to have a typical relationship with her stepfather. Jason had been there for her since she was 12, providing stability and a father figure that she had lacked. Together, the three made up a seemingly happy family. They hosted barbecues for neighbors and attended local events, and no one ever doubted that the Whitmores were the epitome of family bliss. But appearances were deceptive. Beneath the surface, tension brewed within the household. Caroline had begun to notice subtle changes in Tessa's behavior. She was often withdrawn, her laughter fading, her eyes clouded with something she couldn't place. Even more troubling, Jason's late-night absences had become more frequent. He claimed he was handling property deals, but Caroline couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Caroline confided in her neighbor, Linda Barker, about her growing concerns. Linda, a retired nurse, was always the one to offer a listening ear. She had seen enough human behavior to sense when something was out of place. Maybe it's just the stress of school, Linda suggested, but the doubt remained etched across Caroline's face. Linda saw it, but she also knew Caroline to be strong-willed, not the type to shy away from her suspicions. By early April, Caroline's unease had grown too significant to ignore. She noticed the strained glances Jason and Tessa exchanged at the dinner table, how they avoided direct eye contact when she entered the room. The family home, once a lively hub, was now filled with an unspoken tension, a storm brewing, waiting to burst forth. On the surface, Jason's life seemed perfect to outsiders. He was closing a major commercial property deal in downtown Bitterwood and had planned a surprise anniversary trip for Caroline, booking a cabin in the Smoky Mountains. But beneath his confident demeanor, he was juggling secrets that threatened to destroy everything he'd built. It was a quiet Sunday morning, April 12th, when Linda received a call from Caroline. Caroline sounded worried. She was out of town visiting her sister in Charleston and hadn't heard from Jason since the previous night. "Could you check on him, Linda? He's not answering my calls," she asked, her voice tinged with anxiety. Linda, always the caring neighbor, agreed. She walked over to the Whitmore residence. Noticing Jason's black SUV parked in the driveway, she knocked on the door, but there was no response. After several more knocks and calling Jason's name, Linda tried the door. To her surprise, it was unlocked. Stepping inside, an eerie silence greeted her, the type that makes the hair on your arms stand on end. As Linda made her way through the living room, she noticed signs of chaos. Overturned chairs, broken glass. Her stomach churned with a sense of dread. When she reached the master bedroom, the sight that met her eyes would forever be etched into her memory. Jason lay lifeless on the floor, a pool of blood surrounding him, his skull brutally crushed with a hammer lying nearby. Linda stumbled backward, her breath caught in her throat, and with trembling hands, she called 911. Her voice shook as she described what she had found, the horror of the scene apparent in every word. Within minutes, Bitterwood's police arrived, led by Detective Maria Sandoval and her partner, Detective Robert Chase. They quickly secured the crime scene, ensuring no one entered or left. The discovery of Jason Whitmore's body sent shockwaves through the small community. Bitterwood was not the kind of town where brutal murders happened. Local news stations flocked to Maple Drive, broadcasting images of police tape surrounding the once idyllic Whitmore residence. Friends and neighbors, including Linda, were in a state of shock. Jason had been a good man, well-liked, and always willing to lend a helping hand. Detective Sandoval, known for her sharp instincts and attention to detail, immediately suspected that this was no random burglary gone wrong. The scene was too personal, too violent. Jason had been bludgeoned repeatedly, a crime of passion, not opportunity. The investigation began with those closest to Jason. The first to be brought in for questioning was his wife, Caroline. She arrived at the station visibly distraught but composed, insisting she had been in Charleston with her sister, which her sister corroborated. Yet, something about her demeanor struck Detective Sandoval as off. She spoke of her husband with a mix of love and resentment, admitting that their relationship had been strained lately, though she would not elaborate why. Then came Tessa, Jason's stepdaughter. Tessa was nervous, her eyes downcast as she sat in the interrogation room. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. She admitted to having had an affair with Jason, tears streaming down her face as she spoke. It had started 6 months prior, a secret relationship filled with guilt and confusion. She claimed that she had been at her friend's house studying on the night of Jason's death, a story her friend confirmed. But Detective Chase noted the turmoil in her voice, the guilt that seemed to weigh on every word. The affair between Jason and Tessa was a tangled web of manipulation and misplaced affection. Tessa had been vulnerable, struggling with her sense of identity as she transitioned into adulthood. Jason, in his midlife crisis, found solace in the attention of a younger woman, someone who admired him, looked up to him in a way that Caroline no longer seemed to. Their relationship began with small gestures, a lingering hand on her shoulder, late-night conversations that went on too long, the kind of intimacy that blurred lines until they were no longer distinguishable. Tessa found herself drawn to Jason's confidence, his charm, the way he made her feel seen and understood. And Jason, he was intoxicated by the power he held over her, the excitement of a forbidden relationship. But what began as thrilling soon turned dark. Tessa's feelings of guilt grew unbearable. She saw the toll it took on her mother, Caroline's tired eyes, the way she tried to reach out to Tessa only to be pushed away. The secrecy weighed heavily on her, turning the once exciting affair into something suffocating. Jason, too, had changed. The thrill had worn off, replaced by paranoia and fear of discovery. He became controlling, demanding more from Tessa while offering her less. Their last encounter, the night before his death, had ended in a heated argument. Tessa had wanted to end things, to come clean to her mother, but Jason wouldn't hear of it. He had grabbed her arm, his voice filled with anger and desperation. Tessa had pulled away, tears in her eyes, and fled the house. On April 17th, a jogger in Whispering Pines Park near Bitterwood Lake stumbled upon a plastic bag partially buried under leaves. Inside, he found a blood-stained shirt and gloves. The police were called, and Detective Sandoval and Chase quickly arrived to assess the scene. The items were sent to the forensic lab, where the blood was confirmed to be Jason's, and the gloves contained fingerprints that didn't belong to him. Detective Chase had a gut feeling that this was the breakthrough they needed. Reviewing surveillance footage from the park and nearby areas, the detectives found footage of a figure matching Tessa's description entering the park late on the night of the murder. When confronted, Tessa admitted she had gone to the park to clear her head, but she denied any knowledge of the bloody items. The forensic team, however, found more. Hair fibers on the gloves matched Caroline's DNA. The evidence was becoming harder to ignore. It seemed that both mother and daughter might be involved in Jason's death. On April 22nd, with mounting evidence, the detectives brought Caroline back in for questioning. This time, she was less composed, her calm exterior cracking under pressure. When presented with the evidence, the surveillance footage of her car near the lake, the hair fibers on the gloves, Caroline broke down. She admitted that she had known about the affair between Jason and Tessa, how it had driven her to the brink of madness. She had confronted Jason that night. The argument had escalated, and in a moment of uncontrollable rage, she had grabbed the hammer and struck him. She hadn't meant to kill him, she claimed, only to make him feel the pain he had caused her. But once she started, she couldn't stop. The confession sent shockwaves through the community. Caroline Whitmore, the composed accountant, the devoted mother, was now a murderer. She was arrested at her workplace, let out in handcuffs as her colleagues watched in stunned silence. The trial of Caroline Whitmore began on July 15th at the Bitterwood County Courthouse. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Frank Mallory, painted a picture of a woman driven to violence by betrayal and emotional turmoil. He presented the evidence meticulously: the surveillance footage, the forensic findings, Caroline's own diary entries detailing her growing suspicions and resentment. The defense, however, argued that Caroline was a victim of emotional manipulation, that Jason had pushed her to the edge with his affair and controlling behavior. They tried to paint her as a woman who had snapped under unbearable pressure, but the jury was not swayed. After 2 weeks of testimony and 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Caroline Whitmore guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was filled with mixed emotions: anger, sadness, a sense of justice served. Tessa, sitting in the front row, wept as the verdict was read. She had lost both her stepfather and her mother in a matter of months, and the weight of it was unbearable. After the trial, life in Bitterwood slowly began to return to normal. The media coverage faded, replaced by news stories and events. Tessa returned to Bitterwood University, determined to move on with her life, though the scars of what had happened would remain with her forever. She sought therapy, trying to come to terms with the choices she had made and the consequences they had brought. Detective Sandoval received recognition for her role in solving the high-profile case, while Detective Chase moved on to work with the South Carolina Drug Task Force, applying his skills to a new set of challenges. The community of Bitterwood mourned the loss of the man they thought they knew, holding a memorial in his honor. But the whispers of what had happened behind closed doors would linger for years to come. Caroline, now serving her life sentence, had time to reflect on her actions. She knew she had destroyed her family, shattered the lives of those she loved most, and there was no going back. The life she had fought so hard to build was gone, replaced by the cold, hard reality of a prison cell. And so, the secrets of Bitterwood slowly began to fade into memory, a tragic reminder of the darkness that can lie beneath the surface of even the most picture-perfect lives.